Hey, we're live. Hey, everybody. Bill Pritchard, WrestleZone.com here. I am joined by the Wrestling Perspectives, Dennis Farrell and Petey Williams. We're going to be talking about this weekend's big pay-per-view, Impact Rebellion. Uh, Plenty to get into. We've talked ad nauseum in a good way about the main event coming up, so I guess that's the perfect place to start. You have Kenny Omega against Rich Swan for the Impact. Title for title for both the Impact World Title and the AEW World Title. We got together not too long ago. We were talking about Sacrifice, and Rich beat Moose to, get his spot in this match. And Sunday's a few days away. We're finally here. What are you guys thinking going into this event now that it's finally here?
You have to work it. I mean, you start.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be there. And if I had to guess, just looking at our producers and stuff, and some of our producers actually wrestle as well, like me, for example. And I won't be wrestling, I don't think, anyways, on Rebellion, unless they have me on a pre-show or something like that. Don't know what's going on with that. So I'm probably going to be producing this match. So that's really exciting to me. We got, Kenny Omega. I've known him for, I remember wrestling him in Winnipeg before anybody knew who he was, during my first X Division title run. And, super humble guy. I saw him, I think, back in January when he showed up at our tapings. And, he remembers the match that we had that happened, 15, 16 years ago. And he still thanks me for it. And, just him being an upcoming guy and stuff like that, he was just thankful. It's like, you didn't have to do all those spots with me and stuff like that and let me, hit you with all these moves and stuff. But I understand how the business works. I like to pay it forward. So, Kenny, awesome guy. Rich Swan as well. Both these guys, by the way, I've been in the ring with twice. I think I hold a 1-1 record against each of them. So, there's a little tidbit right there. And then we have Mauro Ranallo calling it. All right. So that's the match was already big enough. All right. Everybody's been talking about it for like ever. And this is probably the Impact's biggest pay-per-view, biggest match on the pay-per-view in a very long time. And now you add Mauro Ranallo, one of the best like combat sports commentators in, I don't know if most recently, but I don't know if it's like history. I don't want somebody calling me out on that or anything, but and then that too. And he like pretty much did like a 5-minute like package promo segment, like saying the top 5 things Rich has to do to like, win the title against Kenny Omega, just adding to the story that's already been built up. I'm like, I don't know how you add any more layers on it. So this match obviously is what everybody's tuning in for, and to be a part of it is really special to me.
I mean, I don't know if I can add any extra. As a fan, I'm kind of excited. We were promised a finish to this match, which all of us as insiders kind of got going into this before that comment was made, was thinking, all right, this is going to end in a no finish. There's no way one of these TV companies will go without having their own title on their own champion. And we're now wrong because now we're promised one. So I'm actually genuinely excited to see how this feels, how this ends up, because as much as we all think Kenny Omega will walk out because he's the obvious choice, I'm not so sure he's the logical choice, because we know what we think we know. We look at it, and on paper, this has Kenny Omega victory written all over it. Rich Swan doesn't have a chance, which starts to make me think at some point the Vegas numbers tend to tilt the other way.
Yeah, I don't want to put it too many. I don't know how to say this. I was shocked that Mauro was brought in for this. Like, I honestly thought he was done with wrestling and he was sticking with combat sports. And just to find out that he's coming back for this, whether he sticks around in the future or not, like, I think this speaks volumes. It kind of legitimizes the big fight feel, and I talked to Don the other day. Like, I'll cheap plug my interview. I talked to Don Callis the other day, and he was like, we spent so much time talking about the main event. He's like, this is a card that I would buy a ticket for, and I totally agree with him, because more often than not, and this doesn't apply to Impact because the pay-per-views are usually a staple, but in the past, there's been a pay-per-view built around one match, and then it was kind of like, a couple filler matches, some strong mid-card matches, an opener, but it was really like a one-card match, and sometimes it shows. This has no evidence of that. You have the main event that's been built for months. You have crossover appeal with Finjuice against the Good Brothers,
which could be a main event on any other
show, right?
Yeah.
And then the X Division Knockouts title, both have been built up. The debut, I guess, or wrestling return of Rachel Ellering we saw last night. That's going to be cool. Violent by Design, we still have one more match with them. Eric, told you guys, broke the news on your show, the Wrestling Perspective podcast, about his injury. Had a killer match last night on one leg, basically, and now he still has another one that we're going to see. Trey Miguel and Sami Callihan, there's personal history there. There's personal history, bad blood with Matt Cardona and Brian Myers. Top to bottom, this is a really strong pay-per-view card, and I think, all of the other 7 matches on the card deserve as much attention as the main event's been getting. So I think Don was right in that point, and I guess we'll start with the other quote-unquote main event that Dennis just mentioned, the tag team match for the Impact World titles. Like, what do you like about seeing Finjuice on Impact? Like, what's the appeal for you there?
Well, for me, obviously the crossover from New Japan, right? I mean, it shows like, okay, we're working with AEW. We're also working with New Japan. So it's like the doors are open. That's the big appeal. But, obviously Finjuice hasn't been in the wrestling ring at Impact, as you could see from our, the past few weeks defending the titles or anything like that. So they pretty much won them, took them to New Japan, defended them there, did all that kind of stuff. They still appeared on our show. But, have they been dodging the Good Brothers? I don't know. Right. So it's going to be interesting to see if, like, okay, are the Good Brothers going to win it right back, bring it back home to Impact? And Good Brothers, they work for all the companies too, New Japan, AEW, Impact. So they could take the belts anywhere, and they have been taking the belts anywhere. So at the end of the day, Impact possibly could be, have no more tag titles on their show and no more world title. Then what? I mean, it could be a horrible night for Impact, but a great night for all the fans that are watching.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's good insight, because you look at here's the aspect I look. The Elite come in with a tag team title match and the main event match. They could walk out the most dominant stable, if you think about it, in all of wrestling, with one guy carrying 2 companies' belts, the Impact Championships on the Good Brothers. Wherever they show up, they've got carte blanche. This has a massive storyline built in within itself that I don't think many people even think about, because we're so fixated on Omega that we're not even looking at the outside of what does this mean for the Elite.
Yeah, and the other thing that I really have enjoyed is the Good Brothers are 2 very charismatic guys. I think they met their match in Finjuice, especially like Juice Robinson on his own has charisma for days. So I think that's another thing. Like, we all already each have our own takeaways for that match, whether it's bad night for Impact, the other story going with the Elite, and personality wise, I think this one really jumps off the page. And I don't want to discount what happens, but I think no matter who wins again, like we win or if Finjuice wins, it's going to be a good thing because they can continue what they're going with and expose themselves to a bigger audience for a longer period of time. And if the Good Brothers win, it gives them more to brag about.
Can I ask you guys a question? And
Sure.
Pete and I have never discussed this on the podcast, so this is I haven't gotten his take on this, but Bill, you are prominent in the wrestling industry. Petey, you are the man behind the man behind the man on Impact. But if Impact loses the tag team title belts and their world championship belt, do you feel like this sets the company back a few steps, even though it's storylined? But the perspective from the fans, like, oh, there we go, same old Impact. They've lost everything, starting from the beginning.
I try to look at the silver lining in everything. Let's say hypothetically, Impact loses, their world championship and their tag titles. All right, they got to be defended somewhere. They're going somewhere. So if anything, I look at it as like, okay, Impact's broadening their fan base. They're say somebody's never heard of Impact. If you haven't, where have you been? But anyways, if somebody hasn't heard of Impact and they're watching a different show and they're like, well, what are those belts? Or what is that belt on that person right there? I don't Impact, never heard of it. Let me check it out right now. Oh man, well, look at they got, so to me, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You got to look at the spin on it, on that. The one thing that I think, obviously we have TV tapings right after this, right? So it's like, okay. It's like, let's say hypothetically Kenny wins, right? We film some TVs after that. And then does he lose it before he actually goes back? Like, are we going to, rob the fans like that or something like that? Like, there's a lot of little intricacies that people aren't seeing past, Rebellion. So you have to keep all that stuff in mind too.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm going to take that lane too. Like, there is a silver lining to it. You're gonna see if Kenny wins, like, oh, what's that title he has? What, he's the Impact champion? How did he win it? And go find out how he won it. Like, I think there's a desire to see a legit belt collector story. And I think the exposure is good overall. It's just, I think there's always going to be that little element, like, okay, when does Impact get their win back? Because you've been conditioned as not only wrestling fans, but especially, if you watch some television, like the good guy, like, takes it, and then there's the turning point where they finally, something clicks and they overcome it and they get whether it's the outright victory or a moral victory. Like, you look at, I forget what Rocky it was, but the one with Mason Dixon, the line, was that Rocky Balboa?
I stopped like Rocky 2, guys. I'm going to be honest with you.
The later, yeah, Rocky Balboa, yeah.
Yeah, the one right before Creed, but he lost the fight, but he still proved, like, okay, I can go toe-to-toe with a boxer that is in his prime. So it's like, okay, if Rich loses, he still went toe-to-toe with the best in the world and lost. So yeah, I think I'm looking at it as a positive. Like, there is going to be exposure. There is a positive to everything, and I don't think we're done after Sunday. But there's still that little part of you that's like, okay, when does Impact get their win back? And I think, okay, maybe this puts more investment on the TV tapings. Like, so.
By the way, I got to cut you off, Benjamin. We are reading the comments. We'll get to them. I got your comments.
I was just about to type that.
We are paying attention, and we will get to all the stuff. I'm acting like the host. I'm sorry, Bill.
I was Periscope didn't get. Okay, we'll put it on Facebook.
Hi, Benjamin. By the way.
Yeah. So in summation, I think.
So who are we going with in this match? If we're starting out with this tag team match, who's our? Because Pete, you really legit don't know. You didn't get the.
I don't know. So I don't know who's. I don't know anything that's happening on the pay-per-view. I don't know anything that's happening after the pay-per-view. We're all left in the dark. Okay, so I mean, obviously the people that know are are a tight knit, probably like Scott, Don. Hell, they might not even know. We still have like 2 more days. They might be switching their mind. Like, that's the thing with live TV. It can be printed out like, okay, this person's going to win. This person's going to win. This person's going to win. Send it out to the, to the team. And then
Pete, I'm going to break some news here. Normally, Pete gets all the papers like a week in advance and he knows what's going on. This is the first time since he's come back to Impact in his position that they sent nothing out for the pay-per-view or the shows. So like all the producers, all the agents, everybody is in the dark, which tells me this is going to be exciting.
Well, and also, actually, if I see now, this is all behind the scenes stuff, but like, say if I was the vice president, right? I'd be like, all right, so let's do this. Let's send out, but you also don't want to. You have to have, like, when you're in Scott's position, and Don and stuff like that, you have to have people that you trust by your side. Okay. I mean, that's anything, not even in wrestling, but just in any type of business aspect in the world. So you don't want to work, you don't want to work the boys. You don't want to work, the people and keep them in the dark. But at the same time, I think it would be awesome, especially this is the one time where they would be like, send out the results to everybody and then, see if it leaks. And then switch everything, that I just think of stuff like that. That would be awesome. But
it happens. I mean, I just read somewhere Scream 5 is filming, and they not even just sent out multiple scripts. They filmed multiple endings and didn't tell the cast which one's the real one. So I'd be on board with that. I mean,
but they do that all the time in movies now because they don't want, even though you sign like these non-disclosure clauses and stuff like that. It's like, okay, okay, so you get fined $20,000, so whatever, but you gave away the ending. So I mean, that's good. And you know what I really like about the one thing I like about the no fans, especially when we do TV tapings, is like stuff doesn't get leaked out anymore. Like before, when we used to film, it was like, okay, you saw like 4 weeks of TV and it's like, okay, they already know what's going to happen. There might be some things you don't know because you don't see the backstage stuff. But I really like this because, now it's up to us as a group, as a team at Impact to, hey, let's not leak this stuff and let's make wrestling exciting again. I mean, let's use this no fans to our advantage, even though any one of us would love to have fans back. But let's use the one thing that we got, like the surprise element of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've said for time and time again, the best part of this whole thing is I watch with a fresh perspective each week. I don't like, if there's stuff that does get out, it's like so-and-so was at a taping, but that doesn't mean anything until it actually happens. And we don't know what's going to happen. That's kind of cool to know that.
But my pick, since then it's asked, obviously I'm a Good Brothers fan, man. Like, I love Finn Juice, super cool dudes and everything. But I love the Good Brothers. I don't want to keep bringing up Talking Shop-A-Mania, but like, I think that was Talking Shop-A-Mania 1 was like the best pay-per-view I've seen in years, just because it's so ridiculous, and I love their sense of humor. I love what they're doing for professional wrestling right now. So, if I had to pick, it'd be the Good Brothers.
Boy, I'm going to go with Finn Juice only because I think it's still going to help bridge the gap with New Japan. And I think there's a better story to be told since it feels like New Japan is the newest guys entering into the game.
Okay. Bill?
I'm kind of,
I know
I want Finn Juice to win. I think maybe the Good Brothers get a win back, but I think Finn Juice winning would be better for that ongoing relationship. And I just really enjoy the dynamic that they bring to the show. I feel like it like if they retain and they don't work with the Good Brothers anymore, they could challenge somebody else on Impact and, test them and have like another team to bring up to their level and really find another breakout team.
What I'd like to see, I mean, and I hope this is coming in the future. Again, don't know what's happening, but let's say Finn Juice retains, right? And then, they bring the belts back to New Japan. And then let's say a different tag team beats them for the Impact titles. And then that team is now the Impact champions, and then they got to come back to Impact. So now we're introducing like 2 new characters to Impact, pretty much. That happens somewhere else. So I mean, just the possibilities are endless, and I love thinking about that kind of thing.
I will use this example, and again, it's not anything I've heard, nothing concrete, but like, say, we're talking about like teams coming into Impact and winning them there, but I like the flip side of that. Like, say Guerrillas of Destiny won the titles in New Japan, and then they were the champions and came back over. Like, there's been title changes where it's like, oh yeah, it happened in Japan before, but there was never the ability to have it play out in Japan and domestically. It was always like, you saw it on tape trading and all of, we didn't have the technological advances that we do now. So I think I want Finjuice to win. I don't know if it'll happen, but I'll if I'm making a pick, I'm going with them just because of the possibilities that could happen. Next match I want to get to is Deonna Perazzo is defending against Teneal Dashwood. Another plug, I spoke with Deonna earlier this week, and I mentioned that, Teneal's a little less self-absorbed as she has been lately. Seems like she's taking things a little more seriously, a little more edge to her character. I like these two working together because I feel like they're polar opposites, but at the same time, like Deonna's showing a little bit more of a
like a mean streak kind of.
Yeah, like kind of like I don't want to say Real Housewives, but like sort of theatrical, and then that was Teneal, and she's kind of bringing the other side where she's coming around and being more serious. So I feel like there's a lot that they can play with. There's a lot of gray areas between both of their characters, and this is kind of the Teneal I've been asking for months. Like, I enjoy her work. She's a great character, but I still always feel like even if you're a comedic character, you should still be able to prove yourself in the ring. And it's good to see that going into this title match on Sunday that, she's showing a little bit of what people know about her before Impact. And, she's starting to peel the layers back, so to speak. Who do you guys have coming out on this one?
I'll start, Pete, because I feel like as a outsider looking in, Teneal doesn't have the consistency for me to get behind her. Anytime I start getting emotionally invested, she disappears for TV, whether it's an injury or whatnot in different companies as well. She's somebody that just has a history of disappearing. And I really think if there's a chance that Impact is going to go forward with a bunch of title changes, there's got to be some sort of consistency on the show. And I think Deonna is going to be that consistency. She has a built-in program where if all the belts are gone and she has the only belt, that automatically makes her the top dog in the company. If you guys think about it this way, that belt gets elevated to the top. We could see, I guess, technically another version of what's her name, Pete, who won the championship right before COVID?
Tessa.
Yeah, we could see another version of Tessa, but with a whole different remix and storyline going forward. Sorry, I blinked on her name. But I really like her to retain going forward based on that.
Yeah, I'd like to see Deonna retain as well. I mean, both these ladies are phenomenal in the ring. I like both of their characters. I really like Teneal's All About Me segment where she instead of having the reverse, right? Instead of having somebody she hosts somebody and interviews somebody, she does the reverse, like, hey, you get to interview me. So I really like that concept of it, and that character that she's playing, All About Me and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this match as well. And I think this is going to be like a sleeper, like good match on the pay-per-view. Everybody's expecting a lot of good matches on the pay-per-view, but I think this will be the sleeper that everybody's like, wow, that was better than I thought it was going to be. But I'm going to go with Deonna on this one, just staying with the champion.
And Pete, please do me a favor. If Deonna does win and you guys are at your taping, she has to cut a promo where she calls herself the top dog at Impact now.
Yeah.
You have to make that happen.
Will do.
Agrees.
I'm going with Deanna to retain too. I like she mentioned trying to knock down Taya's single title reign record. She's somewhere in the 130 range. I forget, but she has a little ways to go to catch Taya. But I like the idea if this is instead of looking at it match by match, like looking at the entire card, more to Dennis's point, as an entire story where if Impact loses the titles, Deanna is the top champion. You don't retell the same story where Tessa won the men's belt and she was the top champion by default. Like Deanna is it's a remixed version of that. It's not retreading it. I think she's the right person to do that because when she first came to Impact, almost everybody was like, oh, okay, do you want to, and this is like strictly interview questions, was like, talk about your WWE release. And it's like, okay, when are we getting past that? And then it was, what's a virtuosa? And she's been open about like, she doesn't have to tell everybody what she is or what the name means anymore. She proved it in the ring for months at a time. And I think she's been in the company for like 330 days, but she's been champion over 2 reigns for like 265 of those days. So she spent a good amount of time with the title proving that she's everything she says she is. Now she's finding a new dynamic with Kimberly and Susan or Susie or whoever shows up from what week to what week. But I want to see her, get the ball and run with it for even longer. I mean, nothing against Teneal. I like her character. I think she's a really talented wrestler, but I kind of want to see what else Deanna can do. She still has Taylor Wilde coming. There's a feud. She already retired Jazz. She pretty much sent ODB packing. We haven't seen her in a while. I want to see her face Taylor Wilde. Maybe some other knockouts from the past show up, and she can prove that she can work with this generation and any generation.
Said it well. I agree.
All right. X Division Championship. Ace Austin defending against Josh Alexander, TJP. I want to take a minute. Like a lot of people have said this, but the match that we saw last week it was Josh Alexander and TJP, I thought was a fantastic match. A really good example of when X Division doesn't have to be all about the flips and high spots. And this had some, like, I would call chain wrestling, like some mat stuff. It was really back and forth. I thought it was a really good way to solidify Josh's place in the division, because when he first came in, I was like, all right, is this going to work? Like, is he going to be like positioned as the amateur wrestler trying to, reform the X Division? And, we've done that in different companies with different wrestlers, but I feel like the more that they ingrain him into this division and the more matches we see like that, the less we're going to worry about what X is and just enjoy the matches for what they are. Because I really feel like, these three are a good, they're a good trio. They work well with each other. You have evidence of Josh and TJP. You can put TJ with Ace. And then I think the one thing I'm looking forward to most is how Ace and Josh interact this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my pick for this one, I already did the odds. I think Josh Alexander has 141 2/3% chance of winning. So, I mean, I got to go with Josh, obviously, to stay continuing with the storyline there. But, Ace, man, he all these three are so good. And I would say they're probably the 3 best X Division wrestlers that we have in our company right now. that's not discrediting anybody, but they're just like TJP, just his dynamic. Like he could do high flying, he could do that mat based wrestling. Same with Josh. Those that don't know Josh before Impact, I mean, they're missing out. He had a lot of good, man. He was the man in Canada. He was main eventing all these indie shows and having like these awesome matches and everything. And he's awesome. And then Ace Austin, he's so young. He's gonna be a star in the future. I mean, if anything, you might want to, get Ace out of the X division and like get him up in the, in the heavyweight. Not that it matters or anything, but let's elevate him, like kind of like what they did with AJ Styles. Maybe it's that time for him.
I look at this matchup, and this is going to be the most petty thing I will ever say, and I will admit it right off the bat. I like Josh Alexander, but he needs to lose the headpiece, because I look at him and just see Rick Steiner. And then I see Rick Steiner's failed run as a singles competitor, which makes me put Josh in this box of, I need to see him in a tag team piece just based off the headset. And I get it. It's not fair to the guy. I feel like if he were to lose it, he would take that next evolutionary step forward to becoming a singles wrestler. And that's, and as dumb as this sounds, it's the only thing preventing me from picking him to win this match. I really think Ace Austin is going to retain. I'd like to see him go forward. As you said, he's probably the most talented person there. I think with TJP winning it, he could take it to MLW or any of those other organizations. But I feel like we have enough of that going on with the tag team belts and the world championship belts all in limbo that we don't need to do it with the X division belt as well. So I'm really looking for Ace Austin to retain here.
I think he will. I want to see him retain because that gives him option C. He's talked about it a lot, about how he's still got his eye on the world champion. Whoever that is after this Sunday, we'll find out. But I think I like the idea of continuity there, where he kind of got screwed out of the world title a few times last year. So you can't get screwed out of the world title if you cash in option C, or at least you don't think you could. But I've enjoyed that Scott D'Amore on TV, so I'm sure there's plenty he can do there. Not to skip over it, but you mentioned you did the math, and when we last talked, you guys, Dennis shared that Petey, you had wrestling gear made, and I just was like, oh yeah, you're always prepared, but you made your return to the ring. You got to work with all three of the guys we're talking about. Did you get, and this is not the pun again, but did you get a new perspective for how they are as workers by being in that match with them?
Well, I've wrestled all of them before. I don't think I've ever wrestled. Yes, I did wrestle Josh Alexander one time up in Canada, but I've wrestled TJP back when he was Puma, and I wrestled him in the Super 8 in the finals, and I've wrestled him many times. Ace Austin, I've wrestled many times as well. We've had some singles matches in on Impact Wrestling, and as well as like some of our Impact Plus apps and stuff like that. So yeah, I never been in the ring with Fulton. And he's good, man. Like last night, like, I mean, he's just a monster of a man, makes me look like a child. Like he's just, he's big. And then Fala as well, being in the ring with him as well. I mean, it was a tough match yesterday. And then back at was it Hardcore Justice when I was in the ring with all of them. I mean, it was fun, man. Had a great time. And but I've been in the ring. I've produced all their matches before and stuff like that. So I knew what to expect going in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a pretty cool surprise, not only to kind of see like, hey, you get to use the ring gear, but the promo you mentioned where you got to do the math. I was like, dang, like that was another one of those things where you're glad it doesn't get out. And when you see it on TV, I was like, and then you mentioned on Twitter, you were like, and I did that all in one take.
Yeah,
that was great.
So I was bleeding profusely at that time because I busted open my chin in that match that we just saw yesterday, and we had to film that segment afterwards. And I just super glued it, but the super glue wasn't working. It was still bleeding and stuff. And so I was like, hey man, like I'm gonna take off this Band-Aid and I gotta knock this out before I start bleeding again. So I said, everybody just chill out and like let's do this. And yeah, like everybody just don't mess this up, right? But it's even though it was all on me not to mess up. So yeah, just did the one take, left,
that up,
put the Band-Aid on, hopped on an airplane. That's how it works.
Does the math add up though?
I think so. I kind of did the abbreviated version because I didn't have a minute and a half. They said, hey, you got to get all the math in 50 seconds. So 48 seconds, I got all the math in. The main parts anyways. And yeah, I think it adds up. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah, math's got to add up. It's got to make sense. All right. Let's see. What else are we running down the card? Talk about these. I'll introduce them together, but we can talk about them separately. Matt Cardona versus Brian Myers in a singles match, and then you have Trey Miguel versus Sami Callihan in a last man standing match. I like these. Like I wasn't expecting Trey versus Sami. I think it's been a pleasant surprise. On the flip side, I think I was hoping and expecting Matt and Brian to face off with each other. I think there's some natural chemistry there, some, easy fan base to play to because of their podcast network and the figure fed stuff. I will admit I'm kind of surprised that Matt and Brian have been feuding this long and it's been enjoyable. I feel like, especially nowadays when people get complacent with the same match or feud week after week, I don't think that happened here. I think it's been reinvented in the right ways week after week with, the eye patch and then Matt getting to be the ref and pick your poison was a good one. We'll take this one first. How are you guys feeling about Myers versus Cardona on Sunday?
We just had Myers on. Actually, the interview is going to drop this afternoon when we're done here. The one thing he said going into this match is both of them are having fun for the first time in a very, very, very long time. And I don't know who's going to win. If I had to pick one, I would probably say Cardona will go over because he's the face in this match. But I'm going to look for two guys that have clawed their way back up. They were at the lowest of the lows. In WWE, they were just essentially jobbers. And two guys that love the industry. And to see these guys go from the bottom of the bottom back up and doing what they love at a fun rate, I'm in on this match.
Yeah, it's always good when, and Brian said yesterday, is like, kayfabe, shoot, whatever you want to say. Like, obviously on TV, they act like they're the worst enemies. But he said, Matt's my best friend, man. Like, we do a podcast together. Like, it's so whenever you got two best friends or two really close friends that you travel with and all that kind of stuff, and they get to wrestle each other, it's always special treat for the fans. Like, I remember when I always wrestled Chris Sabin. We traveled together all the time, and he was my best friend in wrestling. And we always had good matches just because we understood each other and the chemistry, and usually that's what brings you together a lot of the times as a pro wrestler, like just that chemistry that you have together. So they have great chemistry podcast, and you're going to see some great chemistry in the ring. If I had to pick one, I think they're both winners in this because they get to wrestle each other as best friends. But I'll say what Dennis said. Cardona.
And by the way, if you're wondering, Petey and I do not like each other outside the podcast. We just actually put on a really good act for everybody, but we don't talk. We don't hang out. I actually hate Canadians, believe it or not.
100%. I hate Canadians too. No,
blame Canada.
I think I'm going to go with Cardona here. I think just maybe this is the end of the beginning of the end of the feud. I think maybe, we get another match with a blow-off stipulation or a tag team match. I don't think Sunday is it for them. I think there is a decisive victory for one of them. I think it's going to be Matt. And then maybe I think, I don't know, Brian pitches some crazy match, and then that's, on another episode of Impact. But as far as crazy stipulations go, Trey versus Sammy's not that crazy. It's a last man standing match, but what they can do within the confines of those stipulations, if you've seen any kind of hardcore Sami Callihan match, you know that we're probably going to see some really cringeworthy stuff, whether it's Legos or what was the one I saw? It was Impacts United We Stand. I saw him use lemon juice and paper cuts between people's toes. So I think this one's going to get pretty graphic. What are you guys thinking going into this one? Is this going to be just a last man standing, or is this going to turn into a hardcore match?
Pete, I'm going to say this. I think a loss here does not hurt Sami Callihan. Sami Callihan is basically the Bray Wyatt of Impact, where Bray has taken loss after loss after loss, and whatever he does next, people are still somewhat excited for, and he keeps reinventing himself. So that's how I look at Sami Callihan. I think a loss for Trey would set him back. So I'm going to say Trey Miguel with the win because he's on such a great run right now. I want to see what he will do next. And let's see what happens to Sami, because when Sami loses, it brings out a more exciting Sami Callihan in a different carnation. So I'm going with Trey.
Yeah. I mean, what you just said right there, Dennis, that's 100%. Like, you have to look at who's the loss, who's it going to hurt? Is a win going to hurt somebody? Like, for example, do you remember how Tessa Blanchard won the title from Sami, right? Did that hurt him? Did a female beat him? Absolutely not. So, I mean, Sami, like you said, he's one of the best. He can lose, and that's a good comparison about The Fiend, because he always loses and stuff, but they're excited to see what he does next. Sami could lose every single match from now until the rest of his career, and people are still going to be excited to see him. That's how good he is with his character, and that's how believable he is. I remember we just had Trey on the podcast like last week, I believe. And all I said to him, I said, hey, man, I've seen a lot of last man standing matches, and a lot of them are boring because you're waiting for that 1, 2. Like, it's just like, hey, come on. We know this ain't it. So I said, just don't make it boring, man. Make it exciting. So, and I know they will. That's just me picking on Trey. But they're gonna have a hell of a match. You look at, I don't know, like, we're in the COVID era, so blood, I mean, I don't know if we would go with that because that's like bodily fluids and stuff like that. I don't know. So they're going to have to be very creative as to, what they're going to do and how they're going to make people cringe. But I believe in both of them, and I think this is going to be a hell of a match.
I think Trey gets the win here. I hope, and I was going to reference something I believe he said on your show. I think this is going to be the start of him kind of moving away from being the white meat babyface good guy and having a little bit more of an edge. And he mentioned wanting to have 2 little associates that would be like beating people up. And that is a personal story, and I feel bad that it happened to him, but I think that would just be an absolutely fantastic spin on having your heavies and, having your muscle guys. Like, I could totally imagine like having like 2 little kids, or, if they're like smaller guys, like coming up and, like having them do your dirty work for you. And I think it could still be that balance of, he still could be a good guy, but maybe like a Robin Hood-esque element to it instead of him being a bad guy.
Guys, I've got it. And I'm going to kind of take a little bit what Dave Elkin said in the chat about seeing Cardona and Myers team up. What if they became Trey heads?
Okay. Instead of edge heads?
Like
yeah. Trey heads. Come on, guys. Huh?
I like it.
Yeah, I'm bringing the good today. Here all week.
I like it. We'll see what. Hey, you got tapings next week, so if I'm gonna use any kind of my suggestive powers, let's put that out into the air.
Okay.
I'm sure they're down for it, guys.
Yeah.
Last but not least, I want to cover the return that happened last night. Rachel Ellering debut for Impact, but return to wrestling. She's teaming with Jordan Grace. She was Jazz's surprise, I guess you could say, and they're going to challenge for the Knockouts tag team titles against defending champions Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steeles. I've really enjoyed Fire and Flava. I kind of think there's going to be a changing of the guard here. I think, if it's not going to be Jazz and Jordan, which I thought was the end game, I think, establishing Rachel and Jordan together is a good thing. Reintroducing fans to Rachel if they don't know her, if they don't know her pedigree, I think is a good thing. I think, we're going to see, I'll call it an upset. I think we're going to see a title change.
Yeah, I mean, I would call it an upset too, just because they've never teamed together. Well, I mean, I don't know if they have on the indies and stuff, but like on the show, like Rachel's, brand new to our company. They have never teamed together. So, I mean, and then they're facing an established tag team that's been holding the titles. And, I always hate it when, the established tag team loses to the, just thrown together team. I kind of, once in a while it works. Like you look at the 8-man tag that we got with Violent by Design against Sabin, Eddie, James Storms, and Willie Mack. I mean, if I was picking that one, I'd pick like Violent by Design to win because they're an established team. They have like the same end goal and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the other guys are just like coming together for a common goal of taking apart Violent by Design. But I'll say I'm going to stick with Fire and Flava. Maybe we'll see something where, Rachel and Jordan will actually feud against each other after this. I don't know. No, you don't like that, Dennis?
You took it. I was going to say one of the two are going to turn on each other. I can't see Impact throwing the belt on a hodgepodge team that just came together out of nowhere. And as much as I like Rachel and as much as I like everything going into this match, I look at the two and I see built-in rivalry, two well-built women that can take it to the house and beat each other down. I want to see these two people fight each other. And I think this is a beginning to an end of what these two can do.
I think, I made my pick and disagreed, but I kind of like the idea that one of them turns on each other. I think it would be Rachel, if anybody, because, if we're using continuity as the blueprint, Jordan trusts Jazz's judgment. Jazz brought Rachel in, but, maybe Rachel saw that as a door to, turn on Jordan for whatever reason. I don't know. That's for the writers to figure out if they go that way, but I could see them feuding. I think getting more proper feuds away from the titles is always a good thing. So if they have multiple things going on, whether it's Deanna and somebody, and then the Knockouts tag titles, maybe you keep them on Fire and Flava, and then you have this third feud where it's not a title feud. Like I think it could work. I think maybe down the line it's kind of something I thought we were going to see from Jordan and Jazz, but I think if you put Rachel in that position, like being a newcomer, and I think the story writes itself. I just don't know if it happens Sunday.
It keeps Jordan busy too, because Jordan should be in a main event picture. And if you're not going to put her in a main event picture, put her in a story that means something or is interesting, not just a hodgepodge tag team that they're just tag team wrestling until they can figure out what to do with her.
I agree. You said it, Dennis. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I think, it's widely accepted that she's one of the top names in the division, one of the stars of the division. So if you're going to have her on TV, at least have it be meaningful. I mean, that pretty much covers the card. We got through a lot. A lot of things can happen overall. I mean, what do you guys want to see if it's not too big picture, like what do you want to see coming out of Rebellion for Impact as a whole? Because we talked about the possibility that 2 of the titles are put on somebody else, or in the case of Finju, stay on somebody else, but Impact could look quite different after Sunday night.
I think you're right. And it's hard to see the future. In all honesty, as much as let's be honest, every single one of us right here in the stream think we know what's going to happen in every wrestling match and every storyline because we've seen versions of it. Almost like seeing a movie and going, all right, that guy right there in the first 5 minutes is the killer. We all think we know what's going on. And I think this is the first time in Impact, AEW, in wrestling where we don't know what the end game is. And I think it's great because neither does ownership and the writers and the booking team, which keeps us all on the hills. And that's what makes it all exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan in this one too. I like speculating, and even when I do get there, I try not to ask like, hey, where are we going with this or anything like that. I like to. This is like my last run as a wrestler. You know what I mean? So getting older, I just want to have the fun part of it and just being a fan again. I think that Impact, whether they win or lose, they're going to move on. I was with the company when they were rebuilding in 2017, 2018. Really light on talent, like actual wrestlers and stuff. And we're all working multiple days and stuff like that. And, budget constraints just because, of the change in ownership from, the Dixie Carter era with all the, high contracts and stuff like that. And then, okay, we have to do something so that we could sustain Impact Wrestling long-term. So I've seen Impact in way worse shape. If the titles leave Impact Wrestling and go other places, I think Impact will be fine. I think Impact is in a great position right now. So do I want to see that happen? No, absolutely not. Impact's been my home since 2004. So yeah, I want Rich to win. Yeah, I want the Good Brothers to win. I want them, I want the titles to be here, and then people coming onto our show and then chasing our titles because they want them. That's how important they are.
Yeah, I think the company will be okay whether Kenny wins the titles. Like, we're going to see Kenny back. That's already been established. Like, he's going to be the defending Impact champion. So I think in that respect, I think, it'll be okay. It might add some stuff where you maybe see him wrestle in Impact on a regular basis. And then on the other hand, if Rich wins, you're going to see Rich on Dynamite every week, and you're going to wonder, hey, where else is he working? What's Impact? Like, if you don't watch it already, I'll go check it out. I can watch it now because there's no war going on. There's, the Wednesday thing's over. So I think there's a lot of possibility, and I think, there's a lot of good results that will come out of the show. And then a lot of questions are going to come out of the show, and that's never a good, or that's never a bad problem to have. So I'm looking forward to Sunday. Anybody that wants to tune in, you can order it on pay-per-view and Fight. If you want to check out more from Dennis and Petey and the team at Wrestling Perspective, you can check them out on social media, on YouTube. They constantly have interviews.
That's all we've been doing lately.
Yeah, we talked about Trey Miguel, Brian Myers. You guys had Scott on. That's going to premiere on Fight, I think, tonight. So
coming up, we got Chelsea Green. That'll be dropping, this upcoming next week, and then many more coming up. And then obviously, even if you don't like wrestling, well, first, if you don't like wrestling, I don't know why you're listening to the show, but if you don't, we have Dennis, introduce our team, man. You're really good at it.
All right, we have 2-time MLB All-Star. He's also a comeback player of the year, Dimitri Young, played many years in the major leagues. If you're not a baseball fan, and you like hockey, we have a 4-time Stanley Cup champion and Darren McCarty that does the show with us. If you're like, I don't like baseball, I don't like hockey, I like music, well, then we have Lars Fredrickson from Rancid, the 90s iconic punk band, doing the podcast with us. And if you're like, maybe I don't like baseball, hockey, or music, we have Petey Williams.
Wrestling. There you go.
Got plenty of stuff, plenty of content. Check us out on WrestleZone. You can check out We have interviews with Petey and Dennis in the archives. We just dropped some with Don Callis, Deanna Perazzo.
We can't even get Don Callis, by the way. That's impressive. We can't
good
even.
job, guys.
And you
and I work with him. He's my boss, and I still can't get him.
I feel privileged that I landed a very hard to get guest now. Again, thank you guys for your time. Enjoy Rebellion this Sunday. Have fun.